Jeremy Roca. Are you there, Jeremy? Oh, I see.
Sorry, present. I apologize. I was.
Sorry, I'm not on dual monitor, so it's like I'm trying to go back and forth. Let's see. Gerald Takano.
Present.
Greer Webb.
Present, and my camera will be on shortly.
Thank you. Deontay Thomas.
I'm present. Thank you.
Johnny Thomas. Sean Ingram.
Present.
David Bland.
Here.
And Genevieve Sims.
Present.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. I think we have Major Vestal is in. I can see him. And Major, you're here, right?
Yes, ma'am. I'm here.
Okay. And Miss Allison Tajay.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Alice Tejada, Senior Associate City Attorney.
Okay. Thank you. We're going to go ahead and go to the approval of the board agenda for February the 24th, which is tonight. Do I hear motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
I second.
All in favor, just raise the hands. Any questions? Agenda is approved for tonight. Approve of minutes from previous meeting, January the 27th. Do I have a motion to approve?
I motion to approve.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Do I hear any questions? Those in favor of approving for minutes for January the 27th, could you please raise your hands? Okay, we are going to do the approval of the mending of the bylaws. So approve of the minutes from January 27th. The approval of the mending of the bylaws about the staggered time of terms. Have everyone looked at the amended part of the bylaws that was sent out of the staggered terms? Do I have a motion to approve the amended bylaws of the staggered terms?
Motion to approve.
Do I hear a second?
I second that motion.
Do I hear a question? All in favor for amending the bylaws for the terms, staggered terms, please raise your hands, please. Okay, so moved. Okay, we're going to go now. Yes, David? Yes.
I would request the various iterations that I got on the bylaw amendment were different from what the city sent out on December 20 and several points. And I would appreciate it if someone would send us a corrected final copy of what the bylaws look like so that we have a consistent set of bylaws.
Okay, Stacy, could you send out the correct bylaws, those that do not have the correct bylaws? And this is going to be our last time doing these bylaws because Mark. Yes, Greer. Yes, Greer.
Sorry, just a question, I guess for either Mr. Bland or Ms. Carlos. Are these bylaws different than the revisions that were sent out just a few weeks ago? And if so, is that something that needs to be forwarded to Mr. Bland, or are we talking about changing words again?
All I can tell you is that the documents that I was sent regarding the bylaw change on the membership deal had other sections in it that were different from what the city sent out on December the 12th, December the 20th.
Well, David, that was the wrong bylaws, and then the other bylaws was resent. So you should have got the copy of the corrected bylaws, but Stacy will send out the corrected copy.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions? So we're gonna move because we need those bylaws done, and we have them done now. So March the 4th, Stacy will be going before the city council for our work plan in the bylaws. Yes, Dr. Caesar?
Yes, that date has been moved to March 16th, just to give you all enough time. And also because we've got to submit it through the agenda process. So that takes a few weeks. So the date will be March the 16th.
Thank you. You hear that, Stacy? March 16th. Thank you. Okay, we will now have, we will start with the staff liaison, Dr. Caesar, on update, and then we will have Demetrius, and from there we'll go to the response of the questions. Dr. Caesar.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to be brief today. I was going to update you all on the date, so you've covered that. And thank you, Madam Chair, for voting on the bylaws, because without the bylaws, we couldn't get the agenda in the system. So now that that's done, that's wonderful. Also, once you all go before council, that's going to be your opportunity to get a city council liaison assigned to this group. Every board and commission has that liaison. And that's been the one thing that we've been missing that I think will be helpful in some of these conversations, is to have that city councilor here at the table with you all. I did want to update you all on the recruitment process. I've seen a lot of questions about that. And just to tell you where the city is in terms of recruitment in general, right now, we're in the middle of the ACM, or Assistant City Manager process, that's happening. We also have a CIO process that's running concurrently. So 2 major recruitments are happening. Chief Deck Brown is retiring in April. So we do want to start the process prior to her leaving, but it won't be starting until after we finish with these 2 major recruitments. And I'll say this just to give you guys an idea of what needs to take place. The police chief position is a very highly visible, very community related position. So we need to have a vast level of community engagement in order to do that. Ideally, we want the community to support this person, and we want the Police Advisory Board to be engaged, along with several other groups, Human Relations Commission, Hispanic and Affairs Board. So I think the role that you all will play will be pivotal in deciding what you're looking for, and then speaking for the community in terms of what you'd like to see in a police chief. Additionally, police staff also need to have a say in what they're looking for, as well as city council. So there's going to be some engagement around what are we looking for as a city? Where do we want to go? So that process is coming, and I'm just letting you guys know it's not going to start until after we finish up with these 2 major recruitments. And on top of that, in the Office of Equity and Inclusion, we have 2 positions that are currently vacant. We have a community relations analyst position that's out there, and I want to say that it'll be closing in a few more days. We have a executive management coordinator position that's going to be coming available in the next few weeks for the Office of Equity and Inclusion. So I want to make you all aware of that. If y'all know anybody in the community that would be interested in applying. So that's all from the recruitment perspective. And then for policy questions.
Dr. Caesar?
Yes.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Would it be possible for our board to receive now a copy of the position description and what the requirements are that are going out to prospective applicants?
Well, that would be difficult because we haven't yet had the engagement process. We're not going to write that position description until we've had this engagement, and the community and the staff and city council and city leadership have determined what elements they want. I'm sure there's one out there, a very basic one, but in terms of what we're looking for as an organization, I think it might might differ from the last process. So, I mean, I could send you all what's out there, and it's actually on the city website right now. Under
It is, okay, fine.
descriptions, but I think we should wait until the process begins, because the engagement is where we're going to get that description and start that search for the ideal candidate.
So does that mean then that our board, that our chair is going to call us together as a board to develop what we think ought to be included, or how are we going to do that?
I don't think it's been determined how we're going to engage the community as well as boards and commissions yet. Again, once we finish the existing recruitment processes for ACM, Assistant City Manager, and the CIO, then we're going to start that process.
Thank you.
Okay, I want to move on to the policy questions that you all have submitted. After reviewing those, you see we've got Alice Tejada from the City Attorney's Office with us, and also Major Vestal. And what we did when we were reviewing the questions, where we looked at them and we put them into 3 categories. And the categories were written based upon the policies. So coming to you all in your inbox, and you should already have it in your inbox, we just sent them out. So if you haven't seen it, that's fine, but you can probably open it up as we talk about it. You'll have policies and articles that have been submitted to you. Major Vestal is going to summarize those policies, and they should speak directly to your questions. Now, in terms of the 3 categories.
Dr. Caesar.
Yes.
We 5 minutes before our meeting, we just got those.
Exactly.
And we cannot, I mean, one, when we clicked on one is just 12 pages. It's no way we're going to be able to, we're going to have to read over it as a committee, and we're going to have to see exactly what he's talking about, because we're not going to discuss. He can give us an overview, but we're not going to be able to discuss it until we read it ourselves. Thank you.
Yes. That's
Gerald, hold on a minute, David. Gerald.
Oh, did I have my hand up?
I'm sorry. Yes.
I didn't.
Okay.
My mistake.
Okay. David, you have a question?
No, I just couldn't agree with you more.
Okay.
Yeah, and let me speak to that a little bit. One of the things we're working on doing is not just having just pop-up presence at your meeting, but having an ongoing presence. So we want to give Major Vestal an ongoing spot on the agenda to talk about things on a monthly basis. So if you do get things now, you can talk about it because you know he'll be here at the next meeting. Same thing with legal. We're going to continue to have this partnership between the Police Advisory Board, legal, and RPD. So I think it would be beneficial if we just have a place on every single agenda going forward for both of those roles. So if you don't have time to read it today, that's perfectly fine, because we'll be around next meeting to discuss and to answer questions specifically. But what I wanted to share was that your questions were broken down into 3 categories. And those 3 categories were crowd control and assemblies, DOI 1107-02, foam projectiles and chemical agents, DOI 1108-01, and body-worn camera footage or body-worn camera use, which is DOI 1109-18. Those are the policies that are coming to you now. And so we're going to ask that Major Vestal summarize those for us. And so I'm going to turn it over to Major Vestal.
Thank you, Dr. Caesar. And thank you for the opportunity to talk again tonight. This is really, it really should just be review. I think from your Citizens Academy, all of these would have been discussed. Just for my benefit, is there anyone in the group that has not read these at this point?
No.
None of us have read it. We got this 15 minutes before the meeting started, so none of us have read a single word of this.
Sure. Well, they're all certainly publicly available. They're available on the website. It was my understanding that you all would have read the entire policy by now, or the DOI, but that's fine. We'll get into 11072. That's response to disasters. That policy, I made reference to this a little bit last month. The policy really provides general guidelines for all employees for disasters as well as civil disorder incidents. As you move through the policy, I think it's only 5 pages, 11072. As you move through the policy, it kind of breaks, it starts off with a general section, and then it breaks things down into basic general steps that you would want to take on any of these types of categories of incidents. Obviously, setting a perimeter, equipment that's available to the officer, to supervisors, and also potentially establishing a field command post or even a mobile command post. From there, the policy really goes into specific types of incidents. The first one that it lists is an emergency at the Sharon Harris nuclear plant. It talks about what to do, what our response would be. Then it moves into civil disorders, and with civil disorders, it gives basic foundational sort of steps that officers and supervisors would follow. Certainly it talks about the prerequisite for taking action or before any enforcement action is taken. It talks about techniques for crowd control. It talks about mobile field force activation and when that might happen and who has to authorize that. And then it also speaks about chemical agents, the use of chemical agents and the approval or the authorization to use that. The next portion of the policy talks about mass arrests. And again, these are just general guidelines. It gives general guidelines for the mass arrest process. It doesn't get into justification for arrest, but just general guidelines on how that process goes and how that looks on the arrest side. The next type of incident that it addresses is flash floods. Obviously, we're in a hurricane-prone area. Flash flooding, storm flooding is an issue from time to time, and just simply talks about flood monitoring, notifications, evacuation type procedures, the notification of the public, the PIO's office, various shelters in coordination with emergency management, how those things would unfold. It goes on to talk about power outages, telephone network failures, and then lastly, it concludes with emergencies at jails or correctional facilities. And again, these are really just foundational steps that each employee should know and understand and sort of be looking toward if one of these types of incidents occurs. The next policy, 11081, is our use of force policy. It's titled Use of Force and Weapons. It's also available to the public. It obviously provides guidelines that govern the use of issued, or excuse me, that governs the use of force and issued weapons. Most notably, right in the beginning of the policy, it talks about how force is only used when all other means to resolve a situation are exhausted or inapplicable. Goes on to explain that force must be reasonably necessary, and it explains the objectively reasonable standard for the use of force. The policy goes over de-escalation, goes over duty to intervene, then moves into a section which really is about the justification for force, both non-deadly force as well as deadly force. And that comes straight out of the statute. Moves into another section called the force continuum. We have a linear use of force continuum. Linear force use of force continuum is based on the totality of circumstances. It really serves as a guide. It's not a step 1, 2, 3 kind of process. In other words, the use of force continuum doesn't have to be followed from beginning to end. It's basically describes a lower level of force to a higher level of force, and explains that the level of force used should be necessary and appropriate based on the totality of the circumstances. The policy goes on to give guidelines, specific guidelines for certain types of force. The first is the pepper gas, then also the use of the baton, conducted energy devices, which is the taser, folding knives, fixed blade knives, and firearms. Goes on to mention and give a section about euthanization of animals before it moves into reporting requirements for use of force. And this is the section of the policy where it talks about a use of force and a complaint of injury report when they're required, discharge a firearm report when that's required. And then it talks about the review process of that use of force report. Back when we did the Citizens Academy, I spoke to you about that process quite a bit and about how we have sort of a bifurcated process. There is one process that we follow that is for a level of restraining techniques or below, which goes through the officer's chain of command in the review process. If it's an officer that used the force, the sergeant would look at it, then the lieutenant, then the captain, up to the division head, the major, and then over to me as major in the Office of Professional Standards. If it's a level, if the force was above the level of restraining techniques, it gets written by the officer, the employee that used the force, and then it gets one level of review within that officer's chain of command, but then it gets sent to a committee, use of force committee, who meets basically as necessary as we get enough cases to review them. And the committee looks at the case as a group and as a whole and discusses that and determines whether it was justified or not. And then from the committee, it gets sent to me for final review. And that rounds out use of force. That's two of the three. Does anybody have any questions about that before I move on to the last one?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
In the material that Greer put together for us, there were a number of questions regarding how the general public is made aware of when the activity that the protest that they're involved with has gone beyond just a civil protest and has become, whatever you would call it, breaking the law or whatever it is, becomes a riot. How does the police department address a group to try to disperse them or try to inform them that they cannot go beyond these kinds of activities? Are they going to be in violation? How do you try to de-escalate it before it gets to the point like it got to in May?
Well, there's a number of options that we could use. Obviously, if there's a protest, we would want to engage with the leaders of that protest. And, developing a rapport or identifying someone in leadership within the protest that we can communicate with is a great first step. And so it's that open line of communication that we would use to try to I guess, speak back and forth with the organizers and with the group itself. Now, if you want to get, if you're asking me to go deeper into tactics, that's something that falls outside of policy, outside of the DOI.
No, I'm not talking about tactics. But one of the things that the consultant said in their report was that the city does not appear to consistently enforce the permitting process. Now, if that is the case, how does that relate to this crowd that I've got behind me demonstrating? How does that relate to that? I mean, if we don't have a consistent procedure for permitting, how do I know that my group is on the edge or not on the edge?
I can answer that for you to the extent that there is an answer, but I think we're conflating the permitting process with First Amendment rights, which the permitting process is just And I believe this has been gone over in the past as well with this particular group, but the permitting process is really notification that assists the city in helping make sure that the protesters are safe and that the rest of the public is safe. And that is why that is required. However, the permitting process would never override the First Amendment. And so I would say that the city, through its council, has been counseling the department and the city that at some point the First Amendment overrides any permitting process. That's not something that I think 21 CP's report really addressed. I think we're just going to have to disagree with that report in terms of making sure that the city continues to protect the rights of citizens who are peacefully assembling. And again, the preference is for anyone wanting to gather and assemble to go through the permitting process. It really does assist the city in planning and making sure everyone is kept safe. But at the end of the day, if there are First Amendment issues arising, that's always going to win. And I believe the other part of the response to the 21 CP point that they were making is that the city has also been challenged on its practices. Its practices were upheld, and we would like to maintain that reputation and that ability to proceed as we have been, because having been held by the courts, we believe it's the appropriate way to proceed with the permitting process and also allowing people to assemble.
Thank you.
Greer.
Thank you. And I don't know if this is more so a question for Major Vestal or Attorney Tejada, so thank you both for being on here tonight. But one of our principal questions, and it was just a direct question that we sent, I believe, was when we did an analysis, this board was tasked with doing an analysis of the 21 CP report, as well as reviewing Chief Deck Brown's report and her response to the 21 CP report. Was 21 CP Solutions given access to any of the personnel files or the private files that Major, you have said that we do not have access to? I don't know if either of you know that.
I believe that that's a question that's beyond the scope of anything that Major Vestal or I can answer. We're really here to provide information to the board regarding the policies and any questions you might have about the policies.
So are you saying you're unaware of?
I'm saying that we're not in a position to answer that. We're not the appropriate people to answer that question.
Anyone else have a question?
We don't dare.
Scotty?
So, Attorney Tejada, I don't know if Greer's question was totally clear, and I don't know if I'm misunderstanding Greer's question, but my question was about the policies, and it was just, were these policies a part of their report? Like, were their conclusions based on these policies, or did they come to those conclusions without having access to those policies?
So the policies that we've been discussing are public policies, and I believe the report speaks for itself in terms of what it reviewed and who it spoke to. And so again, those questions seem like have been answered either in the report or from other members of RPD who are in a better position to provide that information to you. Major Vestal and I are not in a position to give you details about what 21 CP may or may not have had access to.
Anyone? Greer?
Thank you. And Scotia, that was my question. So Attorney Tejada, forgive me if I'm misinterpreting, but I understand that the majority of the Raleigh Police Department's policies are public and available for any of us to search up. And so I, just speaking for myself, am aware of that, but we have gone, not necessarily back and forth, but having consistent dialogue about, I don't know if this is the legal term, but private or policies relating to dignitaries or relating to mass demonstrations that the public is not able to access. And so if you're saying that you nor Major Vestal are the right conduits to ask that question, maybe you know who is, because we've been discussing as a board the importance of transparency and understanding who has access to those policies.
So I apologize if I have not made myself clear, but the 21 CP report and RPD's responses to that report, as well as RPD's after action report, are all public record. They've all been made public. I believe you all have reviewed those, and I believe the answers you are looking for are in those reports. To the extent that you're asking about RPD providing policies that are not public, I believe that matter has been addressed and that the city attorney's office has responded that North Carolina General Statute 132-1.7 restricts your access to those policies. I don't think it's appropriate to go back and forth about that any more than it already has been. So that is the city's position.
Attorney Allison, you said General Statute 132.1.7. What about 132.14? Now that one, we can, that's one is not under that general statute.
I'm not sure I understand the question, but 132-1.4 regards records of criminal investigation. It would not be necessarily relevant to policy, but 137-1.7 does protect sensitive planning information from the public record.
Greer?
Thank you. And this is more so a comment so we can move on to other matters. And so this is an indirect response to Attorney Tejada. I just am a little concerned, and we've mentioned this before as a board, speaking to the board members, that first of all, what is appropriate or not appropriate to ask, I think falls within the board members' jurisdiction. But secondly, to the extent that I'm asking about private policies or dignitary policies, which we may or may not have access to under current general statute, which has to deal with who's in office down on Jones Street, to consider that the question is, does 21 CP Solutions, made up of police professionals and also non-police personnel, more so experts and scholars, did they have access to certain policies or to certain procedures and tactics that we did not? And if so, how are we supposed to be a conduit and speak for the community on the new chief or on any matter relating to policing if no one is truly policing the police? And so that's more so a comment for the board. And so when Scotia, I believe, or I am asking about those policies, we understand what's public and what's not. We were all there during those training sessions mentioned by the major earlier. And so I think these private policies are really the root of the issue. And I'm at peace, understanding that we just don't have access to that, or maybe aren't asking the right people. And so that's something that maybe we bring before council. And I guess I'll just leave my remarks there.
Anyone else? Anyone else have a comment, question, concern about these policies? I just want to say, with this board, we did look over both reports, and we also submitted our analysis on the reports, and we did look the public policies. We asked for a specific policy that we can't, some of that policy is under general statute, but some of it is not. So our question is, what for us to function and communicate with the community. How can we communicate with the community and help gather the community to heal our community, and also to understand what is correct for us to do as a board, because this is a board policy. And just looking on the web page, we can do that, but also there's policies that we can kind of graph some things that's not under the general statute. So to our board members, I just want to put that thought into your process on how we should move forward as a board. Any questions, concerns? Scadia?
I mean, I'm concerned and confused. My expectation was that this was to be a collaborative process between this board, the police department, and the city attorney's office. But increasingly, I'm getting the sense that it is not collaborative. With all due respect, every interaction that we have with the city attorney's office feels very combative and defensive. For you, Attorney Tejada, to tell us that it is not appropriate for us to ask certain questions is not appropriate. It's appropriate for us to ask whatever questions we want to ask. You can choose not to answer them, but for you to come to our board meeting to tell us that we can't ask a question is not acceptable. You were invited to this meeting. Everyone was invited to this meeting to come to the table for us to find solutions. We didn't ask you to give us the policies. We've accepted that you cannot, give us policies that are not public. That's not what Greer or myself were asking of you. We were asking if the after action report was based on these public policies or if they were based on non-public policies, because frankly that changes the way one can interpret the outcomes, the conclusions of their report. And instead of you just saying yes or no, or I can't answer that question, your response came off, to me at least, as very defensive, and I don't understand why. And so my question to the larger board and to you, Madam Chair, is what is the point of us coming together in this way if we are battling the people at the table? I don't understand what the purpose of this is.
Jeremy?
I echo Skatia's sentiment, Madam Chair. I'm just confused. And when I signed up for the board, we were told it's our job to build the relationship between the community and our police for the city. And it seems like what Skatia was referring to is true. It's been an uphill battle and it's exhausting.
Greer?
Thank you, Madam Chair, but I'd defer to Sean first since I've spoken a lot already.
All right, Sean? Sorry.
So just speaking from my position or point of view or my role, let me just say my role. And this is where I put myself in a position, whether I'm in that position or not, as far as community engagement, helping the community understand what our role is, what we're doing. And just like Skatia said, my biggest thing is trusting my policy people. Trusting Gerald, trusting Skatia, trusting Greer to help me understand. And then the problem comes is if they don't understand because they're not getting access to the information they need, for me to say, okay, now I can go back into my community and help my community understand, that's a standstill. And that's a real problem because I get asked questions every day and they say, well, I don't have no access more than you have. You got to go to the website just like I got to go to the website. So there's always going to be this continuum of trust, of understanding, of transparency from the community and the police advisory, from the police advisory to the community. if, you know, I just feel like we should have at least some type of access. I mean, if we don't personally have to see it, I think we've asked this numerous times, even if our executive board of that particular section can have a better communication, because then they can come back to the rest of the board. But there would never be true transparency or true understanding or true trust between the community and the police if we can't even get simple question answers. I mean, there's, to me, and Scott Teal said it perfectly, there's not even transparency between the police advisory board and the police. You know what I mean? So it's just like, how do we make this right? How can we be effective and efficient in what we've been selected and elected to do when we can't even, you know, like I said, she said it right. I feel like we're fighting just to have answers ourselves. So how can we even go to our community to give any information?
Can I interject? It's Robin Tatum here. We don't know whether 21CP was given any confidential policies or not. That would be a question that would need to be addressed to the chief. It's not indicated in their public report. It wouldn't be a public record. It would be something that certain processes would have had to have gone through. So Alice is not saying that refusing to answer, she doesn't have the answer to that question.
Well,
so she didn't even see that though.
It's a question that was on the list of questions. So if that's a question you would like to know, then we can discover whether we could go back and look at whether or not we can get that information or not. So
I understand that.
You don't have the answer. I will say that what we did ask you to do is give us the topics that you wanted the policies on. So all of the topics those questions that you gave us, these policies that we sent actually yesterday are the ones that address your questions. I can tell you that the policy that you were referring to at the last meeting, the one that you asked for that we didn't produce, does not address the topics that you are asking about. The ones that are public do, and those are the ones that you were provided.
Gerald?
Yes. Like I said, I think what we decided last time was to present a little more specific questions instead of broader asking for larger policies. And I think we understand that we are not going to be able to be given some of the answers because it may still fall into the area. So what I'll say is that we have, again, the number of questions that were submitted by the board, and that we have not quite given the opportunity to Major Vestal and the others present to kind of go through the questions and which policies are ones that are applying to our questions that can be released so they can kind of answer our specific questions that were listed that they can answer, and then they'll tell us which ones they can answer, and then at the end of it all, we'll have information that we requested that they could answer, and then we'll know what information still fell under the area that we cannot obtain or they do not have an answer for. And then by that way, we'll end up having information that we can use and going forward over do we need to make recommendations under certain areas or not. So I was saying is that right now we've been stuck on the very first question and have not given opportunity for them to answer which policies cover what they can answer of all the remaining a couple dozen questions that we asked specifically about certain types of things.
Greer?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm not sure if Attorney Tatum is still there or not, but I do have one comment and then a question for I guess it's more so a question for you or Gerald, Sheila. Was not one of our questions that we submitted to the city this exact question: did 21CP Solutions have access to any private records or policies in their analysis of the after action report? That was one of our questions, wasn't it?
Gerald?
That was one of several questions.
Okay.
My point.
Thank you. So I'm a little confused as to why we're being asked to submit that as a question again when it's already been submitted. I don't know if other board members feel this way or if I'm out of line here, but I'm just confused as to why the many questions that we've been asking of Attorney Tejada, Attorney Tatum, Major Vestal, we submitted. And so instead of just giving a yes or no, and Dr. Caesar, it sounds like maybe we need to have the chief at the next meeting or in some correspondence to ask that question, but was 21C Solutions given access or authority to information that the general public within the Raleigh city limits were not, was one of our questions that was asked in writing, and we have not gotten a direct answer. I just wanted to state that for the record because it seems very not only inappropriate, but a bit rude to say that we're not following the process when that was our number one question, Attorney Tatum, in our top section. Was this question, was 21CP Solutions allowed access to private information or personnel policies that the general public was not? And so I think a much more reasonable answer would have been to say to question number one, we cannot provide that for you. You'll have to go to the chief's office herself for that answer, as opposed to bombarding our meeting and stating that we didn't ask it in the appropriate form. Thank you.
Gerald, your hand's still up. David?
Just two comments. Number one, if one reads the January board meeting, the responses that we got to all of the interactions there, I would have to come away. In fact, I did come away from that, reading that, asking myself, well, what is it I can do or can we do as a board? The second comment is just a suggestion. Since we only got these policies that we're talking about, and we may very well have gone over them in the training session, but Jesus Christ and the Lord and the 12 disciples couldn't remember everything went on in those training sessions. I would suggest that we be given the opportunity to read these documents that we just got, and then we can have some substantive questions and discussion at our next board meeting, God forbid, with the major and others that would be involved. I'm just really, I thought when I agreed to serve on this board, I thought this board was going to have as its primary work interacting with our community, primarily in Southeast Raleigh, but certainly all of Raleigh, and finding out what the community felt was appropriately being done, what their needs are, what their concerns are, and then we could effectively, as citizens informed, sit down with the police department and with the city council and work out some solutions to make dadgum sure we don't have any more issues like happened in May, and make sure that our communities have the confidence that we're not going to have some of the atrocious things that are happening between other police departments and their Black communities. Bottom line.
Anyone else?
Robin, I apologize. I got these questions starting with crowd control, so I see that now, but we still don't have the answer to that question without doing more research. So it is not that it's being refused to answer. We don't have an answer.
Scotia?
And Robin, oops, sorry. Robin, that's absolutely fine to say that you don't have an answer. And if that had been the answer that we received earlier, it would have been fine, but that's not what was said earlier. So I think I can speak safely for the rest of the board when I say that we totally get if you don't know the answer. That's not a problem.
Yeah, we just need to move on.
Yeah, that's fine.
I have, I think Dr. Caesar, this question might be for you. The question is, when we first started this board, everything that we looked at from the after action report and the 21CP solutions report and the citizen and the police advisory board analysis, supposed to went under our web page, under us. And it didn't happen. It did and it didn't. Can you give me why? I've heard tonight that 21CP and the action report is on the city webpage. What happened that is not up under, since we evaluated those documents as well, so so the community can see that we have been working also on the on these reports.
Yes, absolutely. So once we get the reports, they go to city leadership and the chief. And once the chief reviews them, then they'll give us the okay to post those on the website. What I can do is follow up. I remember the last time we had to follow up just to make sure that it was posted. I can do that for you guys.
That was one of the promises that was made in the beginning. We saw it come up and then it went away. So I'm just, because I asked that question, I was trying to follow up with Demetrius about it, and he said, okay, because Pam was actually gonna put it on before she went to another section. So please, because our community does look at the police advisory board, and they want to know, what are we working at? Have we really looked at these? Have we analyzed what these reports were? And we want to make sure we be transparent. Whether the city is going to be transparent, we want to be transparent. Thank you. Greer?
Madam Chair, can I just have one?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Can we schedule some time to touch base tomorrow, just to confirm everything? Just you and I, we can offline can talk about it in terms of what we're still waiting for.
Sure.
Thank you.
Greer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I do see that we have some public comments. And so I know we talked last meeting about trying to respond to those a little more in real time. But my question is for Dr. Caesar, just very quickly, if you don't mind clarifying that, because we're talking about our 21 CP report. We did an analysis, of that. I believe, and it was posted to the website. I had, friends, family members, and people in the Raleigh community who could see that, and then it was taken down. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounded like you said the chief had to approve that, and that seems like a direct conflict of interest if that is the case. Sounds like she could just forbid you from posting it if it, negatively targeted the police department at all. Could you clarify?
So the process is, once I receive it from Demetrius, then it goes up the chain of command. So it would go to my supervisor, the manager, and then also the chief of police. They do review all of these items, and if they have questions, they'll come to this group and provide questions. But that's the process for getting it up. Now, in terms of their review, if they've reviewed it yet, I don't know. I can't speak to the posting and the removal, but I can speak to the fact that they review it and they approve it before it goes up.
Jeremy?
Yes, ma'am. I just have a question maybe for Dr. Caesar or the board. It's about the North Carolina Senate bill. Do we have any news about Councilperson Melton on his request to have oversight authority from our legislature? Because it shows us that the Senate said any city that defunds the police will be penalized in essence. We haven't talked any of that, but it shows that the Senate can act. And so I'm just asking, have they decided on the oversight request that we were asking them?
I can't speak to that. I'm unaware of that. That would probably come from city leadership or council.
Okay, we're about to run out of time. I'm gonna take Scotty and Greer, and then I'm gonna look at, can I look at some of the questions and see, can we answer some of those? Scotty?
Dr. Caesar, were you saying that the police chief has to approve this board's analysis?
City leadership and the police chief has to review all the documents.
that means it can go into a deep, deep hole.
Greer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know we're getting low on time, and something that's important to me is making sure we take the public questions. And so I put in the chat, I don't know if it's motionable or not, but if we do go over 7, if board members are able to stay, or if we can approve this meeting. I just wanted to say, because I do believe it's important, and Scotia hit on this earlier, that it seems like this board, of course, which is a volunteer board, as most city boards and commissions are, have a level of urgency, a level of passion, a level of honesty, and a level of transparency that we are looking to ascertain. And that's not being reflected by either the city, the DEI office, or the police department. And so it's very troubling to me, just speaking for myself, when issues like this arise, and whether or not the chief has access over our analysis of her analysis is not necessarily the point. But I don't think that when we're saying that something has been published and posted, that we requested to be published and posted, and expected to stay put under our website. So far, all we have is the Breonna Taylor statement on our website. That when that's taken down, there should be a little bit more concern and urgency on behalf of those whom we sent the article to, the document to. And so I'm not sure if that's Dr. Caesar's office or whomever. To Jeremy's point about the city attorney in her office, it is very concerning to me that we are asking the same questions. I see in the public chat that people are saying that they're frustrated because they're hearing us ask questions that have some sort of answer that we're not getting. For example, the question Jeremy asked about the Senate bill and about City Council pushing for more oversight and for us to be given access to these private policies that we've been in such contention about. It seems like if people believed that that was the right thing to do, that there would be more of a push from the city side, the city attorney's office, to say, hey, what's the status of this? We hear the police board is continuing to mention this. We believe, that the community wants true transparency. Hey, city council, are you serious about this? Let's get something going. It's real easy to just say, hey, we don't believe that the Raleigh people deserve any more oversight over the police board. That would nip this all in the bud. But for us to be given the runaround and say, hey, your statement's been posted, it hasn't. Hey, yes, there is a possibility for you to get oversight, but our office isn't pushing for it. And so, we're not going to talk about it. It's very disheartening to me as a person, to me as a Black man, to me as a college student who's looking toward a better future. And I just wanted to state that before we go to the public comments. And so excuse me for taking up so much time tonight, but this whole board was founded because of protests, because of riots, the language of the unheard, whatever you want to call them, because police officers kill unarmed people. And people that are not white or Caucasian, descended from the Caucasus Mountains. And so for people to not keep that center in their minds as we go throughout this process, I just believe would be a mistake. And so I just wanted to state that as we continue through this Black History Month and we continue to see cases of Black people brutalized by the police. Thank you all for giving me that time.
We have 2 minutes and I'm trying to go to the questions. If anyone got them. I have one from Diana Powell. What is the expected time frame for the chief's position to be filled?
Yeah, so we're looking at probably mid-March for the process to begin, somewhere in that time frame. Chief retires in April.
Why isn't this allowed to be discussed, the policy? Rena? I think she's talking about the policy. Why is it not it?
The private ones.
Yeah. And I think we answered that because it's one of the policies that goes by the general statute. Anonymous, can the city supply the whole policy book for the community and the board? And that's anonymous. And I say that some of the policies are on the city website if the community want to look at them. The specific policies we are asking for, they have not supplied that yet. Another attendee said, this is a clear example of how the city gives you the runaround. The chief isn't needed to answer the questions. And another person wrote again about Raleigh Police Department policy 1109-21. Can we get a clear, honest response? General Statute 132-1.7 would apply because it deals with sensitive public security information, basically details of security plans and arrangements. Common sense dictates that such information should not be publicly disclosed. And since it took 2 months before City Attorney Tatum or any other city staff to cite the general statutes as the reason for the board not getting at least a reacted copy of policy 1109-21, it is obvious to a person with half a brain to be reasonably sure that the city and Dick Brown are hiding something. Perhaps the fact that the Raleigh Police Department violated this very important policy. And am I wrong? And that's all the questions I see. Anybody else see any more? These are public comments. And we're 8:02. Anyone else have anything? I want to say,
Madam Chair, I have a question. Regarding Greer's last comment about the oversight, do you think we can reach out to the other municipalities within our state and ask if that's something of concern to them as well, or is it just a Raleigh concern? Would that be appropriate to come from our board or the city attorney or city council? Like, who do we need to ask for that?
Well, Jeremy, if you look at some of the answers that we got on January, we're not even supposed to do any kind of data collection or surveying.
I mean,
I think right now as a board, we did do an invitation with the mayor. She wasn't able to come to this meeting. Hopefully we'll be able, by next meeting, she'll be able to attend, or either one of the councilmen come to the meeting, because they the one appointed us as board members. And I think we should go to the city council members to understand what our role really is supposed to be at this particular time.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any more questions, any more concerns before I adjourn this meeting? Thank you all. We would definitely, Dr. Caesar, get together and see what we can do about that particular things need to go on up under our umbrella. Thank you, everyone. Great meeting, very concerning for us, very frustrating. We thank you. We'll hope to have some more answers before our next meeting. You all have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.